Welcome back. Episode number 8 of the Family Section podcast, brought to you by Jazzby, the family finance app and debit card for kids. Greg Bartenhorn of Jazzby alongside here as we delve into youth sports again, part 2, youth sports part 2, because this is such a hot topic with parents and kids and families all over the place all the time. Youth sports, it's just become kind of a crazy area that people have to navigate. And there's so much that we couldn't get to it in the first episode, Greg. So we thought we'd go with another one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, people, believe it or not, Tony, a lot of your listeners get fired up about sports. I never would have guessed. But yeah, so we rolled out, I think it was a few weeks ago, an episode on youth sports, and we got a ton of feedback on it and people that wanted to hear more about some other areas. So we thought it'd be a good time to do youth sports part 2 and kind of get to some of the things we couldn't get to, but also more importantly, bring in another expert that could kind of tell a different side of it as well, which I think is something that people enjoy with this topic. So, you know, a few things. We went over all sorts of stuff last time, specifically what we thought was bad about youth sports and what was killing it. And we talked a lot about specialization, things along those lines. But some of the feedback that we got was people wanted to know a little bit more about, one, how it could be better, right? So and honestly, we probably should have done that last time. If we think it's bad, you know, here's how we think it could be better. I wanted to talk about coaching, both some good examples and bad. We got some feedback about people who are youth sports coaches and wanted to know what they could do to help the situation. And then I wanted to talk about kind of what we talk to our kids about, both in my day stories, but also kind of what we hope they get out of sports. So I thought maybe that'd be a good spot to start. So Tony, why don't I'll kind of get us kicked off here. So
sure, yeah, please do.
I am definitely a in my day kind of guy. I find myself with my kids talking about, like, you know, we'd stay out until the street lights came on, and so it's funny. I'm the uphill both ways to school kind of guy. So, you know, I talk about my background in sports with my kids all the time. So when I give them a lesson, like, you know, I'll refer back to when I learned it. So, you know, when I was wrestling in the 10th grade, my coach used to tell me, and my kids always laugh at that because it's kind of for our older listeners, the Al Bundy approach, right? But I refer back to it a lot. And the truth of the matter is I refer back to it a lot because, like I said last time, I did learn a lot. And the kind of the foundation of my life when I became an adult is around what I learned in sports growing up. So do you have those conversations with your kids, Tony, about kind of when you played and how it worked and how it was different?
Oh, look, all the time. I mean, you know, but the contrast, I mean, you know, there's a lot of differences there, but I think the essence of it is the same, Greg, which is, look, I look at sports, particularly for kids. And let me just say, when I say kids, I'm not talking about kids in high school or playing high school sports. You know, at that age, it becomes a little more serious and, you know, it can be more competitive. I'm talking about when kids are starting to learn the value of sports and, you know, the kind of impact they can have on your life and what you can learn from them. So I'm a big believer in, and I remember this from a guy that coached my son in youth hockey. And he said, look, it's about the life lessons that go with it. So I'm a big believer in that. And when I say that, I mean, you know, when we're teaching kids Little League baseball, the goal isn't necessarily to win the game all the time. It's about to teach them about the environment they're in, working with other people, accepting the good and the bad that comes out of competition, supporting your teammates when they fail, and not getting too caught up in yourself if you happen to be the star. Like that's the stuff I focus on in there. I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me, that's the essence of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's funny because, you know, you say it doesn't matter if you win or lose. And I'm kind of I get torn there, right? Because for me, I'm super competitive and I always like to win regardless, especially as I coach youth sports. Like I do want to win. However, what I will say is I go the other way there and say, but losing sometimes are some of those best lessons, right? You have to have losses. And, you know, I've coached some really good teams. I've coached some that weren't so good, but the ones that were really good, you almost as a coach kind of root for that first tough loss because kids start to get a little cocky, and they think, okay, I can work a little less hard because we're so good, it doesn't really matter. And that first loss can sometimes be the best lesson for them, because they learn, okay, I need to continue working. There are things we could be doing better. Losing sucks, and if I want to win, then here are some of the things that I need to do to get better, right? So it's you can learn a lot of lessons from both sides for sure.
Yeah. So look at, I just think failure can be a really valuable thing in dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so that's a skill. Learning to deal with failure is a life skill, and nobody's going to get through it without failing. So look, I'll just give you a quick example as an aside, like in Little League Baseball. And I remember this, that, we would get to the postseason and some of the coaches on other teams would intentionally walk batters in baseball. And that one always drove me crazy. So I thought, what are we doing here? Like, we're telling, look at it from the standpoint of, you have a pitcher on the mound. You don't want to pitch to a kid on the other team. So you tell them, we're going to intentionally walk this kid. My attitude is no. If you have to go out to the mound and talk to the kid and give him some reassurance, like, hey, look, this is their best hitter, which is fine. I want you to pitch like you can get him out. Go get him. And if he hits it off you, that's okay. He's a good player. But I don't want to deprive you of the chance to compete. Because once you do that, you're really sending a bad message to the kid. Now, again, Greg, I'm not talking about high school kids who are playing for the state championship. That is something different. By that point, kids have tried out for a team. They've been weeded out. There are cuts made, and those kids are in it to be serious. The other kids at a younger age are just trying to figure out, A, can I do this? And B, who am I as a person and how do I handle situations? They don't have a clue. So I was always against coaches who coach to win the game when you're with 9 and 10-year-olds, because that's the wrong message at that age.
Look, it's funny because I'm nodding my head as you go, because you're dead right? And I know you're dead right. And especially that, I think that example you gave of walking the batter is a really good one, right? Honestly, for me, it makes me think of it a little different way. Again, I've coached kids that are that age, and you know what? There probably were some lessons, if I could go back, that I probably would do a little differently. Now, I coached football and wrestling, which is a little different than baseball in that sense. And it was always safety first, so that's all that mattered. Sure. But you're right, because that pitcher, and that's in that example you gave, right? That pitcher learns one of two very important things there. He learns that, hey, I was worried that this guy would hit the ball against me and win the game for his team, but I overcame that and pitched him and got the out, right? Which is a huge lesson in a confidence boost, right? Or two, he's going to learn that kid did, in fact, to get that hit and smoke a ball up the middle or whatever it is. And he's going to learn, okay, well, I need to maybe listen to my coach differently. B, I need to, think about how I pitch to somebody there. 3, hey, guess what? There are going to be some hitters that are just going to be better than the way I pitch, and that's okay too. So there's a lot to be learned there on both sides.
Well, so right, and that's what I'm getting at is, we can't all of a sudden just avoid the conflict, right? And that's what that is in that situation. Let's avoid the conflict. And my attitude is no, let's have the conflict, and whether it's a win or a loss is irrelevant. It's about dealing with the conflict. And so look, you can hear my voice. I get a little amped up about this topic because it happened to me when I was coaching. And when I say coaching, I didn't call for an intentional walk, but I hated when other coaches did. And I don't mean necessarily the opposition. I mean, even people I coached with, who said, well, we're going to walk the guy in the other team. And I'm like, no, wrong answer. No. Now, look, if Greg, if a kid is at risk of getting hit with a line drive or something, that's something a little different. Okay. I recognize the safety thing, and that should always be first. But, we need to let them go through things. We need to let them experience it. It's the only way they develop the confidence of knowing I can handle this if it goes bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer in teach them the emotional skills of dealing with that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, look, there's going to be times in your life, either with a boss or with a spouse, or there's, with a friend or whatever, you're going to have these conflicts come up. You're not always going to win, and it's important. Again, life lessons, foundation, right? You can refer back to this in your memory bank. But I'll tell you, Mazz, you were talking about coaches and their different approaches. So I think this is a good kind of segue to talk about coaching and some good examples and some bad examples of what you've seen. So let's start with the bad, then we'll make it brighter at the end. So what are some of the bad coaching examples, baseball and any sport, that you've kind of seen through the youth level?
Well, again, so I think a lot of it comes down to when, people put the competition in their own winning first. And, it becomes about the coach and not the player. So that's the one that sets me off. So, are you trying to teach them something, or are you trying to win the game? Like, who are you competing against? Are you competing against the other coach, or the kids out there competing? And I've just seen, coaches who will, and I don't want to say berate kids on the team, but I've seen coaches lose their minds and get impatient and get frustrated. And I recognize kids are frustrating by definition, but I would say the best thing to do, particularly when a kid fails, that kid feels horribly. So, and the last thing you need to do is to isolate him or put him in an environment where all of a sudden he thinks like, well, I let everybody down, because he already feels that. So my attitude is always, hey, I remember I coached a kid once, and I'm giving you sort of a different version of it, Greg, so forgive me, but who couldn't throw a strike, was really frustrated, came off the field and had his head down. I said, hey, and he came over and I said, all good, part of the deal. You didn't do anything any differently than anyone. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So we keep going forward, keep your chin up. It's not, I always say the mistakes happen. It's what we do after them that counts. So don't hang your head. Don't get discouraged. We're going to come up and you get a chance to redeem yourself. And if that doesn't work, you'll get another chance. They'll keep coming. And as long as you keep bouncing back, you'll be fine. So I'm a big believer in the resiliency, to teach them the resiliency. And I just don't think enough emphasis is put on that.
It's not, right? And so that's kind of the way that I coach as well. I try to make sure that you pick a kid up when they need it the most. I think that's super important for their long-term growth. And honestly, so they stick with sports. I see it with my own son. Like when he gets really down on himself or something, it's like, that's it. Like, I don't want to go through this feeling again. I'm just not going to do this sport. Clearly it's not for me. And I hate that. So I always try to reinforce the kids that need it the most. I think that's important, especially when, look, I am a coach and I do it, I will get on kids, not in a negative way, but because safety, again, for football, it's a little different. So safety is important, making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do, because that's important for the safety of everybody else. It all plays in, and for the safety of yourself. So I will get on kids to make sure that they're doing things right. However, I'm always the first guy to reinforce anything that goes wrong when they need it the most. Like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, that stuff happens. Do you feel like you put your best effort forward? You did it the way you were coached to do it. It just doesn't always go your way. Like, that's sports, right? Somebody's going to, make an interception against you as a quarterback. But look, what could you have done better? You read the play the right way. That kid's a good athlete. Like, what are you going to do? There's good athletes on both sides. So, so I've seen, just to talk about some of the horror stories, Tony. So I've seen coaches at the youth football level, and I'm talking like 12 years and younger, that cheat, and their players know they cheat, and that try and get around rules. I've seen coaches at that level recruit. I've seen them make cuts, which you're not supposed to do at that level of youth football. There's all sorts of things. And I always think about what message are you sending your kids? And also, not for nothing, but what message are you sending my kids? That, because everybody in the field knows what's going on. What message are you sending them that this is okay? And as they grow up, now they're thinking, oh, well, hey, that team was really good and their coach was a bunch of cheaters. Why aren't my coaches cheating? And you see this stuff and it just drives me crazy.
Oh, and it should, again, it pisses you off is what it does. And again, I remember in youth baseball on travel teams where you'd play other towns and they were playing it like it was high school baseball, and, they would get a walk and their kids would sprint to first and run right to second because they knew that the catcher might not be able to throw the ball to second base. So again, and we're doing this as what, 9-year-olds? Yeah. This is what we're teaching them at this stage. To the point where you want to say to the other coach, you know what, we're done here. Okay, you're playing at a higher level than we are. And now you're embarrassing the kids on the other side. And I just was not into that. So that's the only time I ever got really angry in youth sports, Greg, is when I felt like someone was going out of their way to embarrass someone, even on our own teams. Like I would tell all the kids, like, you're here to learn about baseball. We're going to play baseball. But one of your jobs as a teammate is to support your teammates. Okay. If someone makes a mistake, you don't come back complaining about how they couldn't do the job and we're going to lose because of that person. And we don't do that. So I'm a big believer in sort of the framework of it and teaching you the lessons that go along with being on a team, right? Like, I'm a big believer in that. And now, again, as they get old, they'll learn the importance of winning and they'll figure all that stuff out. But at the young age, being part of the group and working together is usually a key element to success, whether you're talking about sports or not.
Yeah, it's so that was always actually my number one rule when I went into a new season that I would tell the kids, because especially at that age, like they will get on each other for sure when mistakes are made. So I always told them, look, my number one rule is you guys don't make any negative comments to each other. It's always supportive. Pick your teammates up. Let the coaches coach. So we will correct issues as they come up. We see them as well as you do. Like, let us coach, but you are not qualified to sit there and tell someone else how to do it better. Right? It's there's no place for that. And it ruins a team. And so you can see it because you'll see the other team, in their huddle yelling at each other, and you can see them just fall apart. And again, as a coach, that's one of your opportunities to make sure that your kids learn very valuable lessons about how it all works. So I think that's an example of both kind of the good and the bad side. You've got to help kids understand that.
Yeah, look, we're not in the business. You're not out there so that someone gets belittled or humiliated. Okay, that's not the goal. Some kids are going to be better than others, but no one kid should ever feel belittled or humiliated. Now, again, they might lack confidence in what they do, and that's inevitable. There are kids that just, don't pick it up as well as others, but they don't need to be mocked for it. We could take those same two kids and put them in a music studio, and one can play the piano and the other one's completely inept. So it's about the arena that you're in where, some of us are more confident in other places. So
or the classroom.
Well, right. That's right too. Right. I absolutely, Greg. And so, that's one where that's the one that sets me off because people for whatever reason, and I'm a sports guy. Okay. I've spent my whole life around sports and my whole professional career around largely baseball, but professional sports. But again, the key word there is professional. That is where the winning matters. So, we're not talking about, let's not take those same principles that apply to the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, and Patriots and apply them to 9-year-olds who will learn how to play baseball.
It's just Tony, that's a parenting thing. Because I think what you said there is important, right? Because our kids are watching this same thing on TV. And so they see the way that professionals do it or the D1 athletes do it. And so they try to go out and emulate that, right? Which I get. As a parent, and as a coach, you have to be able to help your kids understand the difference there, right? So, hey, look, I get that you saw, Rafael Devers do that in a game, right? But here's why Rafael Devers can do it. And when you're playing Little League, you can't, right? Again, he went through Little League. He probably learned the right way to do it. And, you always see this with catch with two hands, right? Pros don't catch with two hands. But guess what? They're professionals. So 11-year-old Billy, you got to use two hands to catch that ball. You're not that skilled yet. So
yeah, just quickly, Greg, the great one all the time is like when a fan yells at a pro baseball player and says, well, he's supposed to run it out full speed all the time. And you say, well, that's what they told you in Little League because the chances of the kid in the field making the play were 50-50. In the major leagues, the chances of the guy making the play are about 98%. Okay. So let's not take rules that applied at age 9 and apply them to professional athletes and vice versa. I just think that is ridiculous, but I don't want to ramble on totally about this. Like you can see that it pushes my buttons, Greg. So
we like pushing your buttons, Mazz.
Yeah.
That's what we like
so
doing.
We will bring in an expert in this particular case. But just quickly, again, you can find the Family Section podcast on the podcast page at 985thesportshub.com, as well as the Sports Hub app. You can check out other original podcasts while you're there, all available from Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Podcasts also available at bpodstudios.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most importantly, jassby.com/podcast, jassby.com/podcast, as well as on YouTube. And as always, we ask you to click, rate, and subscribe. Remember those 3 words: click, rate, and subscribe. Greg Bottenhorn and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to the family section, where I know we're talking about something Mazz and I always get fired up about, and it is youth sports. So like we did last time, we'll bring in someone that maybe has a little bit more experience in this area in terms of some of the backside of it. Joining us today is Chris Fay, and Chris believes in the power of sports done right. Chris is the owner of Next Pitch Baseball, as well as a trainer with Positive Coaching Alliance, which is a national nonprofit dedicated to developing better athletes and better people. Chris has coached baseball at college, high school, and youth levels. He does workshops on a variety of topics for volunteer coaches and baseball parents. Chris is also the president of Wayland Little League. He's got 3 kids, which basically means, like a lot of us, he spends his weekends going from field to field, court to court, not really eating at normal times. I know for a lot of families like mine, and probably Mazz and Chris's as well, sports ends up being like the biggest weekly commitment outside of school and work. You know, we send our kids up for all this stuff, for the life lessons that it gets. Are they really getting those lessons? How can we do it better? So Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you having me.
Anything I left out of your bio there that you want to add or correct?
I think you hit upon everything, but as you mentioned, I coached college baseball, and that was the track I really wanted. And then I started having kids, and my perspective on sports and everything that it could, give, the endless procession of life lessons that sports can provide our kids, changed my perspective. And so now I've been involved with youth sports ever since. And as you mentioned, outside of school, this is what most kids do. And we're missing a huge opportunity, and if we're not doing it the right way. So really stressing how we could do sports, baseball, basketball, football, whatever sport they're playing, make it as enjoyable experience as possible so they can take it to other areas of their life.
So, one of the things that I was thinking when I was going through your bio was, the kind of that last point, right? And it's we do sign our kids up because of these perceived life lessons that they get, and mainly because of the life lessons that we got as kids playing sports. But is that still the case? And if not, why? And kind of how can we make it better if we can? What are your thoughts there?
Sure, absolutely. I think when we sign up our kids for sports, you ask most parents or coaches, hey, why? Why did you sign up your kids for sports? Why do we devote so much time and resources? We give all the right answers. Right? We want to learn about perseverance and teamwork and grit, accountability, time management. That's all great, but it's not really true unless we as the parents, the coaches, the adults reframe what's happening on the field so kids can take it to other areas of their life. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown just because kids are playing doesn't necessarily they're learning all those things unless we as the parents and the coaches are failing in that role. So we're really stressing is to look at the big picture, right? How could we reframe it so it's going to impact them long after that 90-minute game?
So, Chris, when you say reframe, elaborate on that. What do you mean by reframe? Can you give us an example?
I'll give you an example. Just this past weekend, you had a Little League field. Umpire blows a call. What's bigger? Blowing a call or hey, how do we demonstrate poise in this? How do we show that, hey, we're not the type of person that's going to let something as small as this throw us off our game? Because, really, whether or not we win our next game or lose probably is not going to make the biggest difference in our child's life. But how they respond, the effort they put into it, and the lessons and the people that they meet along the way, that's going to go with them for lifetimes, for a lifetime.
Man, you're totally right. And it's so easy to fall into that trap as either a parent or a coach, right? Because generally you're competitive people. And so again, you're supposed to be the bigger person than the adult and not fall into that trap. But man, I've seen it a bunch, right? Where I think your example of a ref blowing a call is perfect, or an umpire in this case, because that happens a lot in youth sports. Again, these guys, they're not professional referees, right? They're teachers and doctors and construction workers and all this during the week, and they come to the field on Saturday or Sunday, and thank God they do, because if they didn't, we wouldn't be able to play the games. And then we're getting on them about blowing a call, and it's crazy.
Yeah, look,
There's,
and again, just
I'm sorry.
Chris, just quickly, because in the interest of full disclosure, I said this to Greg. You and I had met before this podcast. I mean, I've run into you a couple of times at a batting cage I used to take my kids to. So I just want people to know that up front. But when you gave that answer about the umpire, if I could have reached through and kissed you on the forehead, I'd have kissed you on the forehead, Chris. Look, the whole point is the one guarantee when you play sports is that there's going to be an umpire, an official, or a referee who's going to blow a call. It's going to happen. And in fact, it's going to happen repeatedly over the course of your career if you play for any length of time. The lesson is to deal with it, not to yell at the umpire or blame the umpire. The lesson is to deal with it. And I just, it's such a simple thing that is so easily lost, especially in this age where everybody wants everything fixed all the time and stuff sometimes doesn't get fixed.
But again, Tony, especially like we've said at the youth levels, where thank God for these refs and umps, because like it's a sucky job. It's not like they're doing it for the money, right? Like they're there because they love the sport. They have a passion for it. They want to help kids be able to get out in the field and play. And here we are as jackass parents, like getting on their case like it's a professional game. It's insane.
And whether we're here in New England, across the country, there's a national shortage of umpires.
Of course there is, because it sucks.
Exactly. You go to a high school varsity game, and a lot of times there'll be one official, one umpire. And right, who wants to do this? And I think youth sports would be a lot better if we listen to the umpire, not just during the game, but before the game. Because whether you go to Fenway Park or your local Little League, what does the umpire say to start a game? Play ball.
Play ball.
Play ball. He doesn't say, let's get stressed. Let's work, right? It's play ball. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy this time. And it's just, there's just too much stress. And, we're really, again, if the umpire makes a bad call, how do we respond? How do we point? There's the great story about Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth, struck out on a call. He said it was 2 feet outside and 50,000 people are screaming. And Ruth says, hey, 50,000 people know that was a ball. And he said, yep, but my opinion's the only one that counts. And I think that's something we could take from it.
I love that.
Yeah. And so, Chris, one of the things I'd love to ask, and I think I know the answer to this question, but again, you're the president of your town Little League, right?
Yes.
Okay. So some of the problems that pop up in youth sports, and we all know them. What I would like to know is we all go in and say that we want youth sports to be a certain thing, that we want it to be life lessons. What percentage of the arguments or disputes or issues that ultimately arise are the result of parents and not kids?
It's a huge percentage. It is certainly a huge percentage. Kids today, I think you would agree that kids are under more pressure than we were, when you and I both played. But there is a lot of, parents who simply, they want what's best for their child. I think we all as parents, we want simply what's best for a child. Sometimes we go about in a way that's counterproductive because we want our kids to be safe, right? There's some things in this world that we, have to do our best to keep our kids perfectly safe. Sports isn't one of those things. It's okay to fail. We can learn from failing. And, I think as a parent, the best thing that we could do for our child is give them ownership of their youth experience. If they own it, they're going to get better faster. 2, they come off the field. The number one thing they want to hear us say is, wow, I loved watching you play. And the second thing is, and aren't you getting better? Because when kids feel like they're progressing, that they're getting better, they're going to stick with something longer. And we see it. We see it in sports. That first couple of weeks of youth basketball or youth baseball, it's kind of ugly. But by the end of the season, it's starting to look like the game that you and I love. And if we can remind them that, wow, look how far you're coming, they're far more likely to stick with it.
So parents, listeners out there, just to make sure you heard that, right? Your kids don't want you there arguing with your coach or your umpire about your playing time or how someone missed a call or a play. They want to know that you're there watching them, because that's giving them your attention. And they want to know that you're proud of them. And I think to kind of what Chris said, it's, hey, you're getting better. Think back to that one good play. Don't mention the 3 bad ones. Think back to the one good one that they made, or a good swing they put on a pitch, or you're improving. Hey, that was a really good how you did that in the second inning. Like, these are the things your kids want to hear from you. They don't want to hear about your error or the error that they made or how the umpire blew a call or any of this. So I love those lessons, Chris.
Yeah, and it's certainly easier said than done. I could say that I want my son to play these sports and make great friends and teammates and learn all these things. And I have to watch myself. Hey, ask him why he didn't back up that play. Probably is not the best thing immediately post game. So yeah, as you said, focus on those positives. Focus on the bright spot for each game.
Chris, the one of the other things I wanted to ask you, and this relates to parents too, is, Greg has brought up the area of specialization in the past now, that kids seem to be specializing in sports at a really young age, which I am against. I don't know how you feel about it. Look, there are advantages and disadvantages to everything. So I don't want to come off as judgmental if you're on the other side of it. But I do find that many parents, it feels like, get their kids into the sports with the idea of it being some sort of competitive advantage when they apply to colleges or maybe a scholarship and look, I get it. It's a competitive world. You want to make your kids as well-rounded as possible. Again, I think it's for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
If something comes out of it that allows you an opportunity to get into a better school or to get a scholarship, by all means, you should exploit it. I'm not suggesting that. I just think to go into it with that objective is probably asking a lot or looking at it the wrong way. I'm curious as to your perspective.
No question. I remember being in high school and remembering multiple, varsity athletes who played multiple sports. You had the 3-sport varsity athlete, and you don't see that too much anymore. These youth sports are getting them earlier, before they've even reached their growth spurt. They're being told that you're a basketball player, you're a hockey player. And some of the best kids that I've ever coached were multi-sport athletes because they learned things from other sports. They learned about, a hockey player going into the corner to get a puck. That translates well to a 3-2 count with the bases loaded. Just that toughness. There's the burnout factor, playing 12 months of the year, and certainly the injuries. We're seeing so many youth sports injuries, and related to baseball, it's not necessarily how many pitches that a player's throwing in July. It's the fact that he's throwing 75 pitches on July 4th and November 4th and February 4th and throughout the entire year. So there is that physical rest, the mental rest as well. But up until really high school, I would try to encourage parents to get your kids to play as many sports as possible. They're going to get in front of different coaches, different friends, and there's going to be different skills from each sport that will translate to all the others.
And so it sounds like, do you think that ends when they get to high school? Like, hey, once you get, so at what age do you think, hey, now is the time to really focus on baseball?
Yeah, I think, depending on what really the goals of the player are, as they get, into high school, really seeing, what they are, making sure they're not your goals, but what are their goals, for this game. And, it's very easy to say that, hey, I want to play this sport at a college level. Okay. But being able to say, all right, what does that take? What are the sacrifices that it's going to take during high school and to make that a reality? So I think as they get into that, sophomore year of high school, you don't have to decide then that, where you want to play, but you do have to decide, hey, am I willing to make these sacrifices? And if the player's not, that's fine. That's fine. There's still, plenty of things for them to do and to still compete at the high school level. And a lot also certainly depends on the sport. Sports like gymnastics and golf certainly require far more, year-round commitment than some other things.
One of the things you said there that I think is important, I don't think should get lost in the shuffle, is it's their goals, mom and dad. It's not your goals. It's their goals and what they want to accomplish with this sport and not what you dream of them accomplishing with this sport. So I think it's important to separate those two things.
Absolutely. I worked with a player not too long ago. His goal was to make the varsity team. I want that varsity letter. That's my big goal, which, okay, that's great. The parents' goal was I want him batting third and playing shortstop.
Yeah.
Very different goals.
Yeah, look, and that's a problem too. Like, this all comes down to, and Chris, you have kids, right? Your oldest is 12, is that right?
Yes, 12, 11, and 5.
Okay, so again, Greg and I have kids a little older than you because we are a little older than you, I think.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. In fact,
I
know
so.
Greg's
so
older than you.
we both look older than Chris. I can say that.
Yeah, for sure. So, but this is, as I look at it too, I can't tell you how many kids I come across, and when I say kids, I'm talking about college age now, who will play sports growing up. And then it comes time to go to college and they say, yeah, well, my choices were, and then they'll list a Division I school and a Division III school. And they'll say, I chose the Division III because I don't want it, I don't want it to be my life. I don't want it to be everything I am. I want to be a kid that does lots of different things. And I don't want to be committed to just one sport all the time. And also have to practice 5 days a week, year round, and have it be my identity when I get to college. And I want to be a college kid. And I can't tell you how happy I am when I come across kids like that, because it reassures me that, okay, there's someone who gets it. Like, this is only going to go so far in all probability anyway. I'm only, it's not like I'm going to go professional and make tens of millions of dollars. There are those very, very rare examples of people who do, but we all know what the odds are. So you know what? Use it for what you can use it for, which is those life lessons. I think that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you said the word identity, this identity foreclosure, where if, you're not a hockey player, no, you're not a basketball player or baseball player, you're a great kid who happens to play those things. And because if I tie my identity to that sport and I go 0 for 7 in a doubleheader with 4 strikeouts, then I'm a failure. But no, how am I going to respond and come back from that? So absolutely. And, if they choose a different path, that still doesn't mean that they're not still drawing from, I coach a lot of different sports, but I'm constantly drawing back from my youth, high school, and college days. Constantly drawing from those experiences in my professional life, because we remember those. We remember our coaches. We don't remember everything they taught us, but we do remember how they made us feel, and we're constantly drawing on those from experiences.
Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to get to?
God, no, Chris, I love so many of the things that you've said, specifically about the identity there. Like, no, you're not a football player. You're a good kid who enjoys playing football. Like, that's, I've never, like, I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that and use that in my coaching, because I think that's so important. God, let's tie their identity to something other than this, guys. And it's because you're right. Like, then the second that they don't get that elite team, or they don't get that travel team, or that now they feel like them as a person is a failure. And like, no, that's not the case. Do you need to work a little harder if that's one of your goals? Not my goal, but your goal. Sure, let's help you get that if that's what you want to do. But it doesn't mean you're a failure. Unbelievable. Sorry, I get fired up about this stuff.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Again, youth, there's that endless procession of life lessons. We just have to look for it. We have to embrace it. I'll be very quick with this. There was a very unscientific study done many years ago, and they asked kids, hey, who do you want there cheering you on? You have 10 to 12-year-olds. You could have anybody in the world front row cheering you on. And you ask parents this, and they'll say, oh, definitely parents. Say, well, you may have to watch that in Game Changer, a little bit. It's grandparents. Why do kids, at that age, they're relentlessly positive. The grandparents, they see how quick this goes. I think when we're immersed in it and we're traveling around and doing all the double headers and the early morning practices, we think this is going on forever. But we know that, 75% of kids don't play sports after the age of 13. And so it goes quickly. And so we really have to recognize that. And, again, grandparents, they're relentlessly positive. They smile as the kid strikes out. I don't know how they do it, but we can learn something from that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so right.
Yeah. Grandparents are smart enough to have recognized where they made mistakes, right? Yeah. So they lived it. And they said, what was I getting all worked up about that for at the time? Because the reality is that it was going to go down this road from the very beginning, or a different road from the very, very beginning. What was I sweating? What was I stressing about? Yeah. So again, like we tell our kids all the time, Chris, think of the big picture, and then we lose sight of it as parents, right? So like to me, that is, again, what the whole thing with youth sports is like, where's it going? Okay, like just enjoy it for what it is. Let your kid enjoy it for what it is. Just a couple of quick questions, because I know that, Greg, before we let you go, Greg mentioned that you're part of a positive coaching alliance. You're president of Town Little League. The Next Pitch Baseball, is all your work done pretty much in baseball? Or are you involved with other sports?
So with Positive Coach Alliance, we serve every sport, from high school on down. My majority of my work is certainly centered around baseball and softball. But through Positive Coach Alliance, it's a national nonprofit, thousands of workshops every year working with coaches, parents, and athletes with the mission of, if we could get those three groups, on the same page, that's a game changer. It's a game changer for a program, a league, but certainly multi-sport. And, I think, Tony, you just said it. As parents, we know what we have to do. We have to write down why we do it and constantly refer to it. Okay. All of our calendars are full at home with where we need to get them to, but constantly refer to why. Why are we doing this? And hold on to that.
Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to get to?
No, I think Chris, I've learned from listening to you today. So thank you so much. I appreciate your insight.
I really appreciate you coming, allowing me to come on. Tony, loved hearing you on the TV the other day. It was great.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And certainly wish you guys all the best. It's I think it's a topic that hits home for a lot of people, because we played sports as kids, and now when our kids get involved as well, it's a great topic to discuss.
Chris, just quickly, is there anywhere people can find you on social, Instagram, Twitter, any of those things, or what website? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, probably Next Pitch Baseball, nextpitchbaseball.org. I named it that because I think a lot of times in any sport, the only play that we can affect is the next play. And we get a lot of kids who are stuck in the past or fearful of the future, that they're not playing, where their cleats are in the moment. And when kids could focus on controlling those controllables, the confidence goes up and anxiety hopefully goes down. So most important pitch of the game is the next pitch.
Okay, so nextpitchbaseball.org. And I'm sorry, any social accounts or no?
There's a social media account connected to that as well, Instagram and Facebook on the website, yes.
Okay, again. And Greg, did you have anything you wanted to drop in here before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you, Chris. Appreciate your insight, man. It's good stuff.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thanks to Chris Fay for joining us on the Family Section podcast, presented by Jazzby, the family finance app and debit card for kids. You can find the Family Section on the podcast page at 985thesportshub.com, on the 985 The Sports Hub app. Be sure to check out all the other original podcasts as well, available from Boston's Home for Sports. Podcasts also available at BPod Studios, B as in Beasley, podstudios.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and again, most importantly, jazzby.com/podcasts. That's jassby.com/podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And remember, click, rate, subscribe. Greg, what are the 3 key words?
Click, rate, subscribe, Tony.
There you go. We'll catch you next time. We'll catch you next time on the Family Section.
Bye, everybody.